Welcome to another edition of our Thursday night's class. Mazal Tov to Liron for his birthday. I think he turned 18 tonight. Ahavat Yisrael, Bezrat Hashem. You can buy cigarettes legally. Baruch Hashem, beautiful. We normally don't make birthday celebrations in the shiur. Nobody get any ideas, please. I'm not a big fan of birthday cakes either. By the way, if we're talking about birthdays, this is something that people don't know, but I know a lot of times you go out for your birthday to places. Why not? It's a nice thing, assuming it's your Hebrew birthday. If it's your English birthday, go to the church. It's the same thing. I meant that literally. That wasn't an exaggeration. I know it's your Hebrew birthday. Don't worry. But now I want to tell you step two. That I said in the past already. If we're talking about birthdays, and this is totally off topic, then the Americans have this minhag, I guess you can call it, or stupidity, that you put a candle in and the person blows out a candle. Now there are two issues with that. Can somebody tell me who founded that thing in history? Where that comes from? You ever thought about it? Where does it come from? So it comes from an ancient Greek idol worshipping practice. That on the day of their birthday they used to put a candle and they would blow it out. Otherwise known as when you blow out your candles by your birthday, you just did a l'shem yichud on your birthday of avodah zarah once again. And if you did it on your English birthday, then enisu chalal isu. You already did twice avodah zarah one day. So not every stupidity that somebody thought of, you have to stick to. And by the way, in general, this is already more Kabbalah. Up until here was halakha. Now it's more Kabbalah, but this is public Kabbalah, meaning the Stipler already talks about this. Kiner Hashem nishmat adam. HaKadosh Baruch Hu calls your soul a ner, a candle. The Stipler says, therefore, he brings down from Sifrei Kabbalah, a person is not allowed to blow out a candle, period, any time of the year. Because Kaviyachol, it's a bad sign. It's as if he's putting out a life. Hashem Yirachim, we should live long, healthy lives and never know. And that's why, if you pay attention by Talmidei Chachamim, you'll never see them blow out a match. Or blow out the Havdalah candle or something like that. They always do it with their hand, they put it down. Or with water or something. That's Derech Agav. But the reason why we broke our birthday cake rule tonight is because Liron was the founder of this shiur. So really, directly and indirectly, we all owe him a big hakarat hatov. So I guess the cake was the way to do it. It was a cheap way out. But Mazal Tov and Hashem should help you see a lot of nachas from yourself and from your wife and children and everything in life. Amen. Amen. All right, now on topic. Tonight's shiur is first and foremost being given lichvod v'ilui nishmat Moreinu Rabbeinu Chacham Ben Zion Abba Shaul Zecher Tzadik V'Kadosh Livracha Zchuto Yagen Aleinu Al Kol Yisrael Amen. And today was his Yomad Hilulah. His Hilulah was today. So within 3 days, Rabbeinu Hari says it's considered the Hilulah. We're still in the right time frame. Also, Lilu Nishmat Yonah Ben Tamar. Tei Nishmatot Tzura V'Tzora Chaim Tzadikim V'Chasidim Amen. Parashat Pinchas. If there was any parasha in the Torah that people utilize in the most wrong ways possible, it's this week's parasha. And I'm not talking about people that are pokrei ol, that are mechalei Shabbat b'farhesia, or anything like that. I'm talking about the opposite. People that dress up in a nice costume called Itztara de Rabbanan, a costume of Chachamim, a long jacket, a long beard, a hat, pehot maybe, tzitzit dangling out, everything. They look ultra. And anything that they do that's extreme is justified with Parashat Pinchas. Look what Pinchas did. Pinchas saw that Zimri was with a Midyanit and he killed him. And that's the heter to do whatever they say. That's the heter to threaten people that they're going to hell. That's the heter to scare people. That's the heter to bring out everything negative that they can distort in a negative way from the Torah. That's their justification. But they got it all wrong. First of all, if the Torah had to say the story of the incident of Pinchas, that means that this is not a common practice. This is a rare thing. The Torah doesn't have to say it was cloudy today, it rained today, it was sunny today. That happens every day, every other day, every week, depending where you live. The Torah doesn't say stories that happen every day. If the Torah had to bring out a story of Pinchas, that means this was a one-time event. This was a very extreme situation that required an extreme response. That you have to sit and learn for many, many months, maybe even years, to understand what the situation was, because we're talking about great people here, and what the response was. And why Moshe Rabbeinu didn't respond, and he responded. And even after Moshe Rabbeinu knew how to respond, he still didn't respond, and he responded. That's number one. Number two, if we had to identify, and Hashem should forgive me, I don't mean to categorize, God forbid, or to label or anything, but a group in the quote-unquote Orthodox community that's considered the right wing towards the extreme side, I think the first name that would come to mind would be Satmar Williamsburg. Right? It would be the first association that we have. They're anti-Israel, or at least some people distort them to be anti-Israel. They're anti-other things maybe. They dress different, they maybe behave a little different sometimes. They have all practices that seem to be extremely different than the way we practice. And what we think they stand for is some sort of fight against Jews in Israel. That's what we think, right? And I want to correct this ignorance for once and for all. Because I think it's just falsely accusing an entire community over what's not true and what their Rebbe didn't stand for. The founder of this movement was the great Satmar Rebbe of Yoel Teitelbaum, Zecher Tzadik V'Kadosh Livracha Zchutei Yagen Aleinu Amen. Amen. The Satmar Rebbe was a great man. He's buried in Monroe. It's not a far ride. You can once go to his kever. It's worth paying a visit. Many people see many great things over there. And he wrote many, many Sfarim. He was a genius in Torah on many fronts. And every piece in his Sefer on Chumash takes hours to learn because he asks tons and tons of questions, and it's long and complicated. And you can see his brilliance. And this was stuff that he said by heart. He didn't sit and write it. His students afterwards compiled and wrote a lot of the stuff. But this was just off the top of his head. He was Gaon Olam in Torah. He was of the opinion, and I'm not getting into this discussion of why. If you ever want to know, we can make a separate class about that, not on a Thursday. He was of the opinion that the state of Israel, being that it's not run by Shomrei Shabbat, is not applicable for him. It's not Ma'aleh Namorid. He had nothing against Eretz Yisrael. He loved Israel, the land of Israel. He loved the people of Israel. He loved Jews more than anybody in the world. But the state, as in the government, the parliament, so we don't have to be instigating. We don't need it. He didn't. It wasn't a plus. It wasn't a minus to him. It was a zero. He almost viewed it as a non-existent fact. One of his opinions were that one should not take social welfare benefits from the Israeli government. And his students that live in Israel until today, even though there's Bituach Leumi and all different other things, they don't take anything. They pay taxes, but they don't take anything back. Because they don't want to take money from the government, because that's what their Rebbe believes. All the yeshivot in Israel that belong to this sect are on the same page. They all don't take funding from the government, which they rightfully deserve. It's an unbelievable thing. They don't take it. Now listen to this. The vast majority of the yeshivot in Israel obviously don't belong to Satmar. Satmar is a microscopic minority of the Orthodox community in Israel. In America, they're a very large crowd. But in Israel, they're a very tiny crowd. So the vast, vast majority of the yeshivot in Israel are very well funded, now more than ever probably, by the Israeli government. And that might be the merit that the government has to even exist. The fact that they, even though maybe it's not for the right reasons, but one way or the other, they support millions of hours of Torah a year. Amongst those institutions, there's a chain of schools, which is one of the largest chains, it's the largest Orthodox chain of schools in the world. It's called Chinuch Atzmai. You may have heard the name because they do some fundraising in the United States once in a while. Chinuch Atzmai is an amazing thing. In Israel we have three types of education if we're generalizing, besides the Haredi education. There's what's called Mamlachti. We would say that's the equivalent of public school in the United States of America. It's called Mamlachti Dati, that belongs to the Mizrahi movement. And then there's what we today title Mamlachti Haredi. That's an Orthodox version of public schools. They take schools that are free, that don't charge much, that don't charge tuition, and just like a public school system, they teach them a curriculum that's very similar to the general school system, but on top of that, they also teach them a bunch of hours of Torah. To us in America, that's not foreign, because all our Hebrew schools here are like that. In Israel, most of the Haredi schools don't study secular studies. Other than math, they don't teach the boys anything. Girls, yeah, but boys no. Because Bitul Torah, let them learn. So, these schools do. The reason why these schools were founded was to accommodate those who want their kids to grow up with some sort of Torah education, but at the same time are not willing to take the risk of the kid later on not being able to go to college or continue in life in one way or the other. Which makes sense. And this is an unbelievable institution, a large, large network of schools that hundreds and hundreds of thousands of kids throughout the 60-somewhat years of Israel were helped to learn Torah in their merit. The parallel to that in the Sephardic version is what about 30 years ago or so, Ahavat Yisrael founded called El HaMa'ayan. That was the Sephardic version of this thing. The Satmar Rebbe didn't like the fact that Chinuch Atzmai was taking all this money from the government. It was against everything he believed. But Chinuch Atzmai ran into financial troubles. And they sent a fundraiser to the United States of America. And the Satmar Rebbe was alive. And you know how much money the Satmar Rebbe gave then? We're talking about close to 50 years ago. $2,000. Do the calculation with inflation what $2,000 50 years ago is today. It's a fortune of money. And when I tell this to people, they say they don't believe it. I happen to have in my house in the safe a copy of the original check with the Rebbe's handwriting. And he was asked by his students, he said, wait a second, but you say that what they're doing is not the right way. So why are you donating money to them? And this is what the Rebbe said. He said, my way is a way of kanaut. It's a way of extremism. Because I believe that we have to have an extreme differentiation from others. But let's look at the source of kanaut in the Torah. Pinchas. The pasuk says like this: Pinchas ben Aaron, ben Elazar ben Aaron HaKohen, heshiv et chamati me'al bnei Yisrael, bekano et kinati betocham, lachen emor lo hineni noten lo et briti shalom. That means Pinchas, the son of Elazar, the son of Aaron HaKohen, took back my anger, whatever that means, from amongst the Jews. Bekano et kinati betocham, when he did his act of kanaut. He saved the entire Jewish nation. And then he got a blessing as a result, which maybe we'll talk about later. Comes the Satmar Rebbe and says, why did the pasuk, it doesn't sound like a long pasuk. I could have said that whole pasuk in 4 words. Pinchas did a good thing, and he got a blessing. That's it. Got to say who his father is, his grandmother is, what he did, how he did, what the benefits were. A whole elaboration. The Torah, every word is calculated. We don't say any extra words. The Satmar Rebbe said like this: to instinctively respond to a situation with extremism is the easiest thing in the world. Muslims do it all the time. They get angry at Israel, they blow up on buses. Today we have to be politically correct. Radical Muslims. But potentially the Gemara says Esav Sonei Yaakov, anybody can do it. It's Chacham Mitzion's yahrzeit today, so let me tell you something about Chacham Mitzion Avashol. Chacham Mitzion visited in America a bunch of times. The way I know is he was in my house, my parents' house. I was a child. And we got to spend a lot of time with him. It was an amazing zechut. Amazing, amazing zechut. When he would cross the street, when he was in the U.S., he used to stand by the street corner and wait until there was no car in sight, not to the left, not to the right, but like to a crazy extreme. And even if there was a walk sign, and the other guy had a red light and he could walk, he has the right of way, he still wouldn't cross. If he was able to see a car, he didn't cross the street. So once my father asked him, he said, Chacham, this is a waste of time. There's laws, you cross, and that's it. By the way, David, thanks for the pizza, it was good. So he said like this: if in Halakha it says Esav Sonei Yaakov, that means that when they see me as a Jew, they hate me. So I can't trust that this guy is not going to press the gas as soon as I start walking in the street. Wow. So the only way I can, that's how literally he took the Halakha. The only way I can cross the street is if there's nobody in sight. Now I'm not saying we have to do that, obviously, but it was his Hilulat today, and listen to the way an Adam Gadol thought. Today, if a rabbi would get up and say that, right, he'd be fired on the spot. That's like, you can't talk like that. It's racial, it's not politically correct. What should we do? The Gemara is not always so politically correct. The Gemara said what it thought straight up. Comes the Rebbe and says, Pinchas didn't go with spears killing people. No. That's all wrong. That's a distortion. And that's what I began with. That's the distortion of people today of what Judaism stands for. Pinchas saw the Jews were having a problem. That there was a gzerah and Jews are dying. There was a magifa. Pinchas saw that Hashem's upset. Pinchas on his own, he didn't preach to anybody, on his own went to God and cried and begged and pleaded and prayed. He said, Hashem, forgive him, forget about it. People make mistakes. And based on this he explains the pasuk. Pinchas ben Elazar ben Aaron HaKohen eshiv et chamati al bnei Yisrael, period. First he went and he prayed that the Jews should be okay and everything should be alright. Because he loved Am Yisrael. And only when he was done praying, and when he saw that the Jews are okay, and that things calm down, and everything's beautiful, then, bekanoit kinati betocham, okay, he had no choice, he had to do what he had to do. Comes to Satmar Rebbe and says, the only time a person has the right to even think of telling somebody else something is if he first sat and cried for him many, many days and many weeks of Tehillim, then maybe we could discuss if you could say something or not. This morning, this chidush was fresh on my mind because every year Parashat Pinchas, somewhere or the other in the world, I repeat this chidush. And while this was in my mind, I picked up a phone call of a woman who called with an interesting question. She has a son, he's 17 and a half years old, and he got a driver's license, and they got him a car. Nice parents. My parents didn't give me a car when I was 17 and a half, I'll tell you that. But I guess that's the 2017 thing. And but they made him a condition. It seems like, I don't know, you guys probably know this better than me, but there are restrictions on your license at certain ages of how many people can be in the car, what time you can drive. Or, so I don't know, how does it work in New York? I'm just curious. What? So what time can't you drive?
9 o'clock.
9 o'clock at night. All right, assuming that that's the... so they made him a deal. You got your license. Here's a brand new car. But after 9 o'clock at night, you can't drive. Because a law is a law. The mother says the night before, it was last night, meaning 8:30 p.m., he left the house. He told him, hon, it's almost 9 o'clock. If you want to go, take an Uber or something. You can't drive after 9. He said, no, Mom, I'm just going around the corner to get a Slurpee. I'm coming right back. I'll be home before 9. Don't worry about it. All right, this around the corner brought him back home at 4:45 a.m. That was a very large corner. I don't know, in Queens you guys must have different corners than we have in Lakewood. The mother says, I call him, he doesn't pick up. I text him, he doesn't answer. I wanted to file a missing persons report. Finally, after like 3-4 hours, he texts me back, Mama, I'm okay, bug off. That was his thank you for a car. That was his thank you, bug off. All right. Bug off, bug off. At least she knew he was alive, he was okay. Comes on 4:45, she said, I couldn't sleep, but I didn't want to face him because I knew I would blow up at him. I stayed in my room, he went to his room, Shalom Al Yisrael. It's now 8:30 in the morning, she's calling me and she tells me, do I take his keys away or not? That was a deal is a deal, he has to learn. And not only that, look how he responded. Look how he responded. If he would have said, I'm sorry, I got caught up with my friends, I'm at my buddy's house, I'm not driving, Mom, don't worry, it's okay. It's all right, not the best thing to do, but at least I cut him some slack. But here, bug off. Bug off. So I told her I have 2 things to tell you. Both of them you won't understand today. But in 15 years from now, when your son is a big Talmid Chacham, then call me back and say thank you. And she says, what? I said, number 1, you should go downstairs with your husband and take out a cake and a bottle of whiskey and make a l'chaim, a celebration that Hashem gave you a schus. That's unreal. That for the first time in your life, your child is actually going to believe that you love him. She said, what? I said, let me tell you something very simple. When your child does what you want and you say, wow, so nice of you, that's a big deal? No, a stranger would do that. When your child, let's say, doesn't exactly behave the way you want because he's a teenager, but it's not extreme, it's within teenage norms. And that term, teenage norms, is broadening year by year very drastically. So, maybe you're not so comfortable with it, but you say, teenager. Could be the social worker in school, talk to him a little bit, could be this, could be that, whatever. But at the end of the day, you're going to brush it off as a teenager. So when you tell him that you love him, does that mean anything? No. I'm your kid, you brought me to the world. Overall, you're proud of me. I do somewhat well in school, I'm okay, I'm put together, I don't give you too much drama, I'm not on heavy drugs, I don't, nothing too extreme, not married to Goya, I'm not... Alright, so you tell me you love me, of course you love me, it's convenient for you. I said, last night he went and broke your rule with what you gave him and then spit in your face, bug off. For the first time in your life, you have an opportunity that when he comes downstairs and has lunch ready on the table for him and a note saying I love you, he's actually going to believe you. Because this time, you got nothing in return. said, now don't fail the test. And this lady, you would think at that point, would either hang up or say thank you. She didn't get it. She says, so I should take away the keys? I said, am I wasting my time? I said, who spoke about keys just now? So first of all, how are you getting the keys? She said, it's in his room. I can go in. He's sleeping. I said, don't invade his privacy. What gives you the right to walk into his room? What gives you the right? It's his private space. Then I told her this piece from the Samar Rebbe. And I said, you told me that he came home 4 whatever in the morning. I said, and now it's only 8 something in the morning. So even if for the past 4 hours you read Tehillim, you definitely didn't finish 3 books straight. And the disciple used to tell parents that had problems with their kids that they should read 3 books of Tehillim straight without stopping. I said, so first go read 3 books of Tehillim straight without stopping, and then we'll see if you still want to take away the keys. And she said, thank you very much, and she hung up. Let me tell you the end of the story. In 15 years from now, we'll see what's going to be. That I don't know yet. Maybe in 15 years, I'll share it with your kids or your grandchildren, B'ezrat Hashem. But at about 5:15 or so p.m. today, I get a phone call from somebody. I don't pick up calls in general. My phone's normally on Do Not Disturb. I tell people text me like this. I can see if it's important or not, and I call back. At the pace of, on a slow hour, 60 phone calls, it's kind of impossible to pick up everybody's call. But this person calls once, calls twice. And on Do Not Disturb, you don't get the actual call, but you see it on the missed calls. At one point, I saw 19 times in a row he called. 19 times. Koch nefesh already. This is not... I was kidding, my phone will erupt from these phone calls. So I called back. Hear a voice of a boy on the other end of the line. He says, your name is Yaakov? I said, yeah. He said, what do you do with yourself? I said, can I know who you are and why that makes a difference? So he said, no, I need to know. This is important info for me. He's talking, with the whole slang. I'm skipping a lot of words he said in the middle. I said, honestly, I'm unemployed. I don't really do anything. So he said, what does that mean? You sit bored all day? That's what you do? I said, no, I recently got a job. It's called a janitor. He said, oh yeah, where do you work? I said, all over the Jewish nation. People make messes and I try to clean them up. He said, so you're the guy I want. I said, why am I the guy you want? He said, you saved my car last night. I said, what do you mean? He said, let me tell you something. I left the house last night. I was in a very bad mood. And I really was planning on going around the corner to buy a Slurpee, come back home, and just watch TV for the rest of the night and lock myself in my own world. When I went to wherever he went to, I don't know, he told me some name, but it wasn't 7-Eleven, I don't know, some other name. And I'm not here to give any youngsters ideas anyway. He said, I met some of my friends that either are or aren't, the biggest tzaddikim, but potentially definitely are. And we decided to go hang out. And I'm the only one with a car. So they asked me if I would drive. And I wouldn't tell them no, right? Because then I'm going to be the little scared boy who doesn't want to drive because mommy doesn't let him. So I said yes. And they promised me that it's only going to be for whatever, we'll chill for half an hour. So I figured my mother's going to get over it. I came home at 9:15 instead of 9, not the end of the world. I said, but they had other plans. So we went to New York City. And I don't know how this kid's just got a license, just got a new car, he's already going to Manhattan. That's all I got. It's a good teenager today. So we found some place. And no, kids, it's not giving anybody ideas. We all have fake IDs. And we went in to drink. And I was the only one who didn't drink. This is what our young boys are doing tonight, Hashem Yah. One of my friends got drunk. He used other words, but I'm saying it nicer. And I couldn't leave him there. So we were all stuck negotiating for a while after we were done. And as the hours were going by, my mother's texting me and calling me and harassing me. And what am I supposed to tell her? I went to the city, we got drunk in a bar, how am I driving home, what's good, I got a drunk guy in the car on top of driving when I'm not supposed to, what am I supposed to do? I told her to bug off. So I came home at night, and I was 100% convinced that I have no car. And I was hating my friends. I said, they dragged me into this, I'm not that type, I didn't want to do this in the first place. Totally hating them. But it is what it is, my parents' car, they got it for me. I understand cause and effect. I did it to myself. I was hoping to negotiate after a week to get it back. Says I get up at 1:30 in the afternoon. I come downstairs to my kitchen, and I see this gorgeous lunch sitting on the table with a note from my parents saying, "We hope you got rest. You're probably hungry. Have a wonderful day. We love you. If you need anything, call us." I run back to my room saying they're probably trying to bribe me because they took my keys away. And my keys are sitting there on the desk and my car is parked in the driveway. And I called my mom and I said, "Mom, I love you too. But I know you for 17 and a half years. This ain't you. What got into you?" She said, "I'll tell you what got into me. There's some guy that I listen to on WhatsApp once in a while, and he has all these awkward things about parenting. And I decided to call him for advice this morning. And he was the one who told me to do it. I don't know why she had to say that. She ruined her whole love thing, but whatever. And he told me that unconditional love is that even when you spit in my face, I still love you and I don't fight with you." And he's right, and I agree with him. And that's why I did what I did, to make a point. And the guy said, "What's the guy's number?" So she said, "What do you want? What do you need his number for?" So first of all, I want to tell him thank you. Second of all, I want to ask him to spend more time with you and Dad. Third of all, I need a favor from him. Okay, so I hear all this. I said, "Thanks for the story. Cute, you gave me some material for tonight. But what's the favor?" And he says, "I told the story to a bunch of my friends, and each one has his own story." He says, "If you think I'm the unstable one, I'm the angel in the group, and they all want to come learn with you. Could you find us an hour a week that you can teach us? There's like 30 of us that have signed up." So we're not going to wait 15 years to get one Talmid Chacham. We're going to wait a couple of years to get 30 Talmidei Chachamim. Now imagine that mother would have spoken to some social worker at 8:30 in the morning. And she would have said, "You have to put down boundaries." We would have murdered 30 Jewish children in one word. Pinchas ben Elazar ben Aaron HaKohen. Yeah, sometimes you have to stand up for what's right. There are times that I lay it down to people as it is. When boys talk to me about different addictions that they're thinking of getting involved with, I take them on a ride to the cemetery to show them where it can end up. And I offer them an alternative. It's called a hug. I said, "Obviously you're not happy in life. Nobody's loving you enough. Come. If your parents don't want you, I'll adopt you. Let them sign papers. I always wanted more kids." But you can only say it as it is after you shed the tear for the kid to do the right thing. After you gave your heart, your life, your soul, everything in the world, you sacrificed it all that the kid should have a chance to do the right thing. But before that, where do you come into the equation at all? Where? Where does it start? Interesting point. I called tonight's class Ahavat Yisrael, obviously in the spirit of the 3 weeks. On Tuesday, disappointingly, I was really hoping it wouldn't happen. We had to fast once again. Shiva Sabbat Tammuz. I have nothing against fasting. Most days I don't eat during the day. But not to fast because God doesn't have a home. That's kind of sad. But the Gemara says the solution, and the solution is not made of some fancy fanfare. It's made of something very simplistic. Loving Jews. If we would love each other, this would be over. That means that this whole exile that we're in, with all its problems and consequences, is in essence a self-created problem. And a self-created problem over what? What do you prefer? What makes you happier, to love somebody else or to hate him? When you hate somebody, you're miserable and they're miserable. When you love somebody, you're happy and they're happy. So it's a self-created problem that comes from an extremely depressing, morbid place. It comes from a masochist hurting himself. It's Jews hurting themselves by hating others, or by not accepting others, or by not loving others, or by not understanding that no two people are the same and we should respect other people's differences. And year after year, we go through what we call the 3 weeks, 21 days, which is a cycle where God hopes once again, maybe this time I'll get them to love each other. Maybe this time I'll get them to accept each other. Maybe this time we'll get this thing that there's no more my community, my custom, your custom. We're just one nation. And at that point, I can come back. Parents feel very uncomfortable sitting by a table when their kids are fighting. Hashem feels very uncomfortable building a temple when his kids are fighting. He don't want his kids in the house fighting. It doesn't feel good. He wants a third temple that he can feel good in. His kids loving each other. So now, let's learn a piece that Rav Shach talks about. I've heard so many different speeches over the years, just as a result of speaking myself. Sometimes somebody speaks before you, after you. It's not nice to just walk out, so you have to sit through it. And the 3 weeks tone normally is tzniut, campaigns for communities that are not interested in that, hafrashat chala, brachos parties, don't eat this, don't listen to music, don't. Many of them are halachot, but they're just symbolic for the real mission. And I got to give credit to some. They'll talk about not gossiping. That's already a step in the right direction. But to actually openly just simply talk about love another Jew for who he is. Whether you know him or not, doesn't make a difference. Just love him for who he is. Just accept him for who he is, even if you disagree with anything and everything that he does in his life. That's not popular. Then you're an outcast, so nobody wants to say that. So let me tell you openly, one of my closest friends, who I'm friends with since I'm 15 years old, was a roommate of mine in Yeshivat Kol Torah in Beit Vagan in Cholot Pisgat 32 in Jerusalem. And this boy, at a certain point, decided that he doesn't believe in anything. But not only doesn't believe in anything, he loves learning. And to him, it's not a contradiction. So we shared an apartment, and on Shabbat afternoon, when I would go to sleep and take a nap after the meal, he would stay up and sit on the porch with a Gemara and a Rashba and a Rabbi Yaakov Yagen and a cigarette. And it wasn't a contradiction to him, because this he loves, and Shabbat he doesn't believe in. Shem Yerachem. And we're talking about a lot of years later. I won't say an exact number. I'm not here to give out my age. But probably more than you're assuming. And we're still very close friends. And he still does the same tragic thing every Shabbat. That's his day off for work. And from Friday night till Saturday night, except for a few hours in the middle that he sleeps, he probably learns 17, 18 hours straight, Gemara, with all the Rishonim. And every Saturday night he sends me an email of his chidushim that he wrote on Shabbat. On Shabbat. And so many times people told me, why do you want to associate yourself with him? He's crazy. He's a lunatic. My own friends labeled him bipolar, this, split personality. They get as if they're all shrink suddenly. Everybody had a label for him. So wait a second. His blood is less red than mine. He's the same Jew as me. What does it make a difference? So second of all, what's the only chance that maybe one day he will be a Shomer Shabbat? That in the back of his mind he knows that there was one friend, and I know he's going to watch this because he watches the speech every week and then sends me criticism, that there was one friend that all these years, and we're talking about a lot of years now, keeps up with him, responds to his learning things, has discussions with him, goes to visit him when he's in Israel, and accepts him for who he is, the way he is, even though I personally see it very, very differently. To me, someone who smokes on Shabbat, al pi halacha is mechalel Shabbat b'fahesed, if he does it publicly. And that's a very big sin, and you shouldn't try it. It's not worth it. But so what? So because I see it, so my attitude has to now go and, all right, let me distance myself? No, just the opposite. He needs me more than everybody else. A lot more than everybody else. That's called Ahavat Yisrael. When you love somebody because he's convenient for you or she's convenient for you, that's not love. When you have every reason in the world not to love somebody, and if I wanted to justify breaking up this friendship, let me start telling you justifications. U'misanecha Hashem esna, it's a pasuk. God, those who hate you, I hate. A person is not allowed to sulit chaber l'rashayim. It's brought down in halacha. And I can give you a list. I know all the quotes that other people will say about this. I had the schut to go through Shas in my life. I know it all. I know it. But that's not what Hashem wants. Hashem wants that these people we should bring closer, not further. My community, I love those words. In my community, we don't accept these people. I will never go out with this type of whatever. I don't want to say, I have a lot of names to say and it could be funny, but why laugh from Jewish people's account? I won't do it. What do you mean you won't do it? What, that person's less Jewish than you? That person's less Jewish than you? I remember as a young Syrian boy when I dated my wife who was a wonderful Bukharian girl, my friends thought I was crazy. The night of my engagement, they almost said Shiva on me. Your mom didn't have somebody on the block from the time you were born that she knew was going to be her potential wife? You had to go to Queens to look for a Bukharian girl? Couldn't go somewhere else? Years later, when these friends come to me for their marriage problems, I tell them, oh, so the Bukharian girl from Queens wasn't such a bad idea after all, huh? Who's coming to who? Hashem shall till 120, happy and healthy. The Rebbeinu Shalom wants us to learn to accept another's differences. Not to accept another that's going to be like me. You see somebody walking into shul, the first thing you do is you run to the bin of the keepers and shove one on his head. For what? So you should never want to come back again? What are you trying to accomplish? For what? Let me tell you a story that happened right upstairs here in the hall. 20 years ago, Rosh Chodesh Elul. Elul now, it's going to be 20 years. It was Rosh Chodesh Elul 20 years ago. My uncle Zechet Tzadik V'Kadosh Levacha V'Nisim Yagen Zchutei Yagen Aleinu V'Al Kol Yisrael was in Deal, New Jersey and came here to give a speech in honor of Rosh Chodesh Elul. He was very popular. It was before the days of speakers, and he had a phenomenal sense of humor. And so that was also a magnet. And people liked his style. He said it as it is. He said whatever he thought. He was very politically incorrect, always. And the place was packed. Sold out crowd. And he never came first because he didn't like just sitting around and people kissing his hand. He wasn't into that. He was a very humble person. He didn't like the whole rabbi show. So he would walk in last, sneak his way in and get up, start speaking, and then if people needed him, he would stay. If not, he disappeared. I drove him. We pulled up to the shul. They were nice enough. I got to give them credit. Whoever the gabbai was back then, I don't even remember. Saved us a parking spot right in front of the shul. We parked the car, and we walk in. As we walk in, this is what he witnessed. I didn't even pay attention. There was a Israeli girl who came to hear him speak, I guess. She walked in through the front door right before us. And she must have confused the synagogue and the beach. I'm assuming by the way she was dressed. I guess she thought there may be a swimming pool in here or something. I don't know what it was. Or maybe fabric was really expensive that season and she just couldn't afford it. But one way or the other, she wasn't dressed appropriately to go to a bar, definitely not to a shul. And a woman saw her walking in, went running over to her and said, "Come on! Respect for the shul! You can't walk in like this!" And my uncle saw it. Now everybody knew my uncle to be very extreme when it came to subjects of tzniut. He said a lot of harsh things on the topic. So they were sure that he's going to fire even worse. And he walks up to the girl and he tells her, "Tzadek, that Yudiya? You're Jewish?" She says, "Yeah." He said, "So chibadet. You gave respect. You came to shul. What could be more beautiful? Come inside." At the end of the shiur, there were lines of people waiting to talk to him. This girl on her own understood. She put on a shawl or whatever she found over there in the little drawer upstairs. And she sat through the shiur. At the end of the shiur, there was a line of people to talk to. Now she came, one of the later people. So she sat in the back of the back of the back. So naturally, when you go up to speak to the rabbi that was up front, whoever sat up front, not only did he get a front row seat, now he gets first online. So she was one of the last people in line. She waited until 5:15 a.m. The speech was over at 10 p.m. That's a lot of hours to wait for a rabbi. And at 5:15 a.m., she goes to my uncle and she tells him these words. And the only reason why I was up is because I had to drive him back. She says, you should just know that I was one step out of the shul because that lady was so mean to me. So I didn't mean to disrespect. I don't know better. Whatever. This is the way I am. I'm just crazy. Whatever. I do whatever I want. And then you brought me in, and I didn't even know you were the speaker. I didn't know who was speaking. I just heard there's a good speech. Somebody convinced me to go. I figured I'd give it a shot. First time in my life hearing a Torah speech. So I identified with every word you said. I felt it was customized to me. I want you to tell me now what I have to do to be a good Jew. They said, what do you mean what I have to do? She says, I don't know anything. I was never taught anything. What do I have to do? My uncle said Shabbat, Tzniut, kosher, and the list went on and on and on and on and on. And she said, find me somebody to teach me. We'll fast forward 19 years and 11 months in Chulon in Israel. There's a wonderful, wonderful woman who's married with 7 children, Bli and Arab ben Porat Yosef, who her oldest son just got accepted to Hebron Yeshiva, the most prestigious yeshiva in the world. Now imagine my uncle didn't have that type of Ahavat Yisrael. You're a Jew. You came to shul. That's it. No further questions. Now imagine he didn't love Jews that much. And this was the passionate man that, said the harshest things in the world on the subject of modesty. But you got to know what to say, when to say, where to say. And in 2017, you got to know what not to say. And that's the most important. And what he realized was, your blood and my blood are the same. We're all Jews. Achim anachnu. You came to shul? Fun. Baruch haba. Welcome. This is a great lesson. Listen to a word from Rav Shach. Rav Shach Zitzel says, hey, let's test your intelligence tonight. Who was the first person that's documented in the Torah as one who was taken hostage? Kidnapped. What was the first kidnapping story in the Torah? No, before Yosef there were a few. Sarah. Talmid Chacham, no? See, it's worth learning in Israel Yeshiva. Sarah Imenu. Sarah Imenu goes down to Egypt with her husband, Imina Achotiyat, and so on, and she's taken captive. By who? By an evil ruler who has a very disgusting agenda. The Mishum Kvod HaTzibur, we won't even say. What's Avraham Avinu's response? What does he do? Nothing. Praise, that's it. What ended up happening? They got plagued, the country was about to fall apart, everybody's sick, a whole thing. Not only does she comes back to her husband, Ula Avraham heitiv ba'avura. Avraham becomes very wealthy, gets all these things as a result, and compensation we call it, and so on. Not that long later, another story in the Torah. Lot, which was Avraham Avinu's nephew, was Lot a tzaddik? Far from it. To the point that Avraham Avinu wasn't even willing to live with him. Ima small ve'imina, ima yamin va'asmeila. You go one way, I go the other way. We can't live together because our views are just too different. It's not going to work. Lot is taken captive by the kings in the War of the Kings, 4 kings against 5. Avraham Avinu hears that his nephew was taken captive, and what does he do? Doesn't pray this time. He goes to war. The famous miracle, the dust that becomes spears. And he has a landslide military victory to save his nephew, the Rasha. Save his nephew, the Rasha, that he doesn't want to live near. Now, it could be the chronicle order is a little bit different, but at the end of the day, this is the outcome. If I was Avraham Avinu's wife, I would file for divorce that minute. When I was taken hostage, you didn't go to war, you didn't do anything to protect me, you didn't this, you didn't that, you prayed. And for your nephew, you went to war, you turned the world upside down. What's your nephew more important than me? That's Rav Shach's question. It's a very obvious question. Oh, we learned Chumash, and this we learned in preschool already. What's the answer? Anybody has a recommendation? I'm open to options.
Prayer is more important than actually fighting.
Prayer is more important, so it's easier also. He should have prayed and for Lot also. Why didn't he pray for Lot?
Lot had no zechut.
you have to say?
That's an interesting answer. It's brought down in Achronim. What?
Hashem knew you loved Sarah, but he didn't have that same amount of love for both because they had different views.
And therefore continue. You're onto something?
Had to fight for him instead of just pray for him because he knew that
Prayer wouldn't be on such a high level. That's an answer that's also brought down on one of the Achronim about 375 years ago. You're a very smart boy, Liana. Very, very smart boy. Unbelievable. So we heard two beautiful pshatim here, but I'll tell you what Rav Shach said because that's my little agenda. Rav Shach said, why was Sarah taken captive? Sarah at that point. No? Why was she taken hostage? Because she was beautiful. She was taken hostage over materialism, beauty. Why was Lot taken captive according to the Midrash? Because Lot looked like, no, that was in Sodom later on, but Lot looked like Abraham. They resembled each other. And the Goyim hated Abraham and what he stood for, meaning the preach of God. So their way of taking revenge against the God movement, against Hashem Kavyachol, was by taking Lot captive. That was the symbol of fighting Judaism. Comes Rav Shach and he writes, a Jew has to know to pick his battles. And he doesn't mean this with others. He said it about himself, like within your own personal life. What am I willing to stand up for? What's important? Where's the point that I stand up? So when his wife was taken captive, it hurt him. But he relied on Hashem, Hakol Tovah, and therefore he's going to pray and Hashem's going to change the Gzerah. Because she was taken captive over materialism. But when there was an issue of a Chilul Shem Shamayim, that the Goyim are going to be able to say there's no God in the world, look, we got Lot who looks just like Abraham. At that point he said, for Hashem's kavod, I can't rely on prayers anymore. Then I got to go into action. And he went to battle. Now I want to throw you a curveball. I was taught as a teenager, rightfully so, it's brought down in many, many poskim, and during the 3 weeks, from Shiva Asar Tammuz until Shabbat, it should be every day, but we don't concentrate so much every day, so at least the 3 weeks, our attention span hopefully will last. When we say V'Yerushalayim Mincha B'Rachamim Tashuv 3 times a day in the prayer, in Amidah, we should at least understand what we're saying. If you shed a tear, it wouldn't be a bad idea either. And that's very important. And I hope we can all connect to that message. Tonight when you pray Avid, or tomorrow morning when you pray Shacharit, you say B'Yerushalayim Mincha B'Rachamim Tashuv. Pay attention to what that means. Hashem went to exile for so many years. For Am Yisrael. But that's the obvious. Tonight you didn't come to hear the obvious. So here's the not so obvious, unfortunately. You know which other prayer you should have kavanah for? During the 3 weeks, an extra kavanah? And maybe that's why during the 3 weeks, according to the kavanot of the Kabbalah, we don't have many kavanot during the prayers. We have extra kavanot in certain parts and less kavanot in other parts. Things are different. There's very tense times. Everything has to be done differently. Rabbeinu Ari composed a little prayer that's 2 lines long that he advises one to say right after Birkot HaShachar before he begins to pray. That the summary of the prayer is, I accept upon myself the mitzvat aseh of the Torah ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, to love every Jew. Ve'areini ohev kol echad ve'echad miYisrael, and I love everybody. No disclaimers there. No fine print. Each and every Jew I love. And then he says, and I'm ready now to pray. And we once had a whole shiur to explain what he meant by that and why it's so important. But if the whole reason why there's no Beit Mikdash and today we have to say prayers instead of korbanot, instead of just being able to bring korbanot, is because of sinat chinam, then maybe the most important prayer of the prayers, to have an extra kavanah tomorrow morning, is Areini Ohev Kol Echad Ve'echad MiYisrael. I'm going to take a proactive step in my life to love each and every Jew. Let me tell you an amazing thing. A bunch of years ago, I had the merit to help out a total stranger from Israel with a son that was extremely sick with a rare illness that he needed medical treatments in the United States of America, in Boston. one of the issues that we ran into was finance, insurance. There's no insurance. So a certain amount the Israeli insurance companies are willing to pay under certain circumstances, but that was a drop in the bucket in relative to the expenses that were involved in saving this child's life. And now we have to raise money. I'm a terrible fundraiser. It's funny, I have charity foundations that distribute millions and millions of dollars a year, but I'm the worst fundraiser ever. Because I'm a shy person, I'll never ask anybody. It's not my type. If I have to ask somebody for a donation for something, I have to fight everything that my whole nature is. So I wasn't going to go on a fundraising campaign. That wasn't my style. So I thought in my mind, who are those that donate naturally the most towards people with illness, medical bills, and so on? And the people that I see actively involved in hospitals, I see many wonderful, wonderful organizations and Bikur Cholims and great people. There's so many. We don't want to downplay anybody. But amongst the many, the ones that stand out to me in the biggest way in the Manhattan hospitals is the Satmar Bikur Cholim. Yeah, Satmar. They're in almost every hospital. They'll do anything for you at any time of the day and night. I have friends that volunteer for them that Thursday are busy picking up in Brooklyn from all different places literally van loads of newspapers that they package in every language, in English, in Hebrew, and this, and different styles also, more religious, less religious, that they just give out to patients in hospitals. So on Shabbat they should have reading material, because on Shabbat they can't watch TV, they can't this, they can't that, they don't have a phone. So at least to keep them busy. They'll go to any extreme to help somebody feel more comfortable. An ill person. So I call one of my Satmar friends and I tell him, listen, we got a situation. We need X amount of dollars. I'm talking about upwards of $250,000 to help an Israeli guy's kid out who's in Boston. This is the, you can verify all the facts on your own. Checks should be made payable directly to the hospital. I don't want you to think there's any middlemen over here. What could you do? And he tells me, I'm in for $50,000. So that's a nice start. But before you give me $50,000, I got to tell you two things. I need $250,000, not $50,000. And I want you to know where the money's going to, because we're friends, and I don't want you to come back to me later and complain. So I said, fine. So he said, fine, what? I said, the gentleman who I'm trying to help out is a general in the Israeli army, otherwise known as a Zionist in their terms. And he said, let me go into the Rebbe. And he calls me back about an hour and 15 minutes later, and he says $250,000 was sent to the hospital. I said, what? He said, which word didn't you hear? $250,000 was wired to the hospital. They have their money, the treatments will go on, everything's fine. And if they run out, they know to call us, we took over the responsibility of finances, everything will be taken care of. I had the shock of my life. I didn't even know what to say at that point. I was stuck. I was just like dumbfounded. What do you do with that? What are you supposed to say? Like, that's amazing. You guys are unreal. But 9 weeks later, I think it was, Baruch Hashem, this boy was already recovering. Against all medical odds. Nace after nace after nace, the boy was recovering. The father, who's general is not the way we see general in the United States. It's what we call general in Israel is a lower level, but it's still a high ranking in the military. The father, who was on military leave, was with his son, but they were scared to send the son back to Israel yet because they wanted to make sure there's no relapses and other issues along the way. So Satmar rented them an apartment, not in Williamsburg, in Manhattan. And not on the outskirts of Manhattan, in Midtown Manhattan. So they should have their life comfortably. And this is the life that they're acquainted with. Tel Aviv, Manhattan. 2 more weeks went by, and the doctors gave clearance for the kid to go back to Israel. The gentleman, the father of this boy, called me and said, tomorrow afternoon at 1:30 p.m. we have a flight from Newark, New Jersey to go back to Tel Aviv. I'd love to get together with you tonight with my son. We owe you our lives. You saved my son's life. We want to say thank you in person. I said, I don't accept thank yous. If that's the reason, I have other things going on tonight. It's fine. Have a safe journey. If I'll ever need a favor in Israel, I'll call you. He says, no, this is important to me. If you don't want to do it for you, do it for me. I said, my friend, I've been lying to you for 11 weeks now. I didn't pay 1 penny. So he said, what do you mean? He said, what? But the money was paid. I said, yeah, everything was paid, but it wasn't me. There were other people behind it. They just asked me not to tell you who they are. And that's why I didn't say. But now I'm going to breach my promise to my friends in Satmar, and I'm going to tell you who they are. said, you know those guys that you think hate Israeli soldiers? You know those guys that the media portrays in a disgusting way as people who are anti-Israel? Those gentlemen heard that you're a general in the Israeli army, and they said, whatever he needs, whenever he needs, 100% all his bills are on us. And when I went into their leader, or the decision maker, it's not the Rebbe, but whoever the decision maker on finance over there in this campaign was, and asked him, explain me the rationale, he said, when I give regular charity, there's very little L'Shem Shamayim in it. I feel that it's the right thing to do. I'm rich, he's poor, I'm healthy, he's sick, so of course I pity, I give. But when I take a person who everything he is and everything he stands for is against my entire spiritual belief, and I save his life, and I give him the best in the world on his terms, then I know I'm doing it for the right reasons. He said, this was the greatest mitzvah I've ever done in my life. And when this general in the Israeli army heard this from me, he tells me I want to go meet them. I said, I don't know if they'll be willing to meet you. I wasn't supposed to tell you this. So I picked up a phone call. It took a lot of convincing, and they ended up agreeing to meet. These gentlemen were meeting a guy who's, and of course he's hugging them and thanking them, and he's all emotional and everything else. And they tell him, buddy, you're going to go back to Israel in a few weeks. Your son's going to need this, that. The Israeli insurance system is not always the best. Don't, take our numbers. Call us. You don't need the middleman anymore already. Call us directly. We got your back, whatever you need. They spent whatever time together and they left. The next day at 1:30 in the afternoon, well, before 1:30, about 11:30 in the morning, I had this burning urge to go to Newark Airport to give that kid and his father one last hug before they go back to Israel. When I went to the airport and I was saying goodbye to them, the guy asked me, you have tefillin? I said, no. I left it at home. He said, is there a way I can get a hold of tefillin before I go back to Israel? So I said, yes. Elizabeth, New Jersey is pretty close by, and I'm sure I could find something over there. So he says, see what you could do. I said, why? He said, my son and I want a pair of tefillin. That's our little way of saying thank you. Whether they're Shomer Shabbat today, I don't know. It's none of my business. I see them a lot. I'm in touch with the son and the father. Up until today. Today he's a retired general. He's not a general. But his son is a phenomenal person. But if you ask them if they are Orthodox, they'll definitely say no. And then they'll say, but we're Satmar Hasidim. So little do they know, we had a Katzin in Tzal that's a Satmar Chasid. Unbelievable. But what's the message of Ahavat Yisrael? Pick your battles! Where are you fighting? Are you fighting to save a kid's life because that's what's important now? And his ideology of who he is or isn't is not important now? Or are you fighting over some sort of thing that may be right, but it's not important right now, it's not applicable? Where are the resources and the energy being put into? Are financial resources in all our charity organizations put into spreading the message of love? Or are they into spreading the message of terrorizing kids, fitting them into boxes of the school system? And the second they don't fit into the box, we throw them out. Rosh Yeshiva came to me a few days ago and asked me for a substantial donation for his yeshiva. And I told him I'm willing to give him 10 times the amount. And he was shocked, right? That's a big score. He's asking, we're ready for a large amount. I said, but not to be used for your purpose, to be used for a different purpose. I said, to build a humongous wall to close off your yeshiva that nobody should ever be able to walk in there again. And he looked at me and he said, what? We're friends. Why are you talking to me like that? I said, because I heard that you threw out 3 kids this month. And those are 3 kids that are probably on the streets on drugs. And the one who did it was you. And a place like that, I want to shut down. So I'll give you 10 times the amount. You probably need a living, right? So yeah, you have a living, 10 times the amount. Just stay out of trouble. Don't ruin our boys. He said, but what do you mean? You know what these kids did? You know the other side of the story. He starts throwing me, Shulchan Aruch, Shamua B'nei Achechem. I said, I don't care what the other side of the story is. Because I know from my Rebbe of Shach Zitzel that under no circumstance may one throw out a child from a yeshiva. Sometimes you can transfer them, put them into a place that's more accommodating. If a kid doesn't want to learn all day, don't force him to be in a yeshiva that's going to teach him all day. Put him into a baseball camp. I don't know, it's something that fit. But to put him on the street? To leave him without a place to go? Not to know what's coming next? Who's the posek that took the responsibility on that one, I told him. And then he tells me, if I take him back, do I get money? I said, you see how corrupt you are? You see the problem over here? Wait, you're just telling me how they're not for you. Now for the... I said, take him back, do tshuva. Let me hear in 6 months from now that yeshivas run like a normal yeshiva. And if you ever have financial problems, come back to me. I said, but at that point you won't have financial problems. You know why? Because the kids are going to love you and the yeshiva so much that that's all they're going to be talking about. Not only to their parents and grandparents and uncles and aunts and everybody else, but that word's going to spread like wildfire because that's extremely rare. And you know where everybody's going to want to donate to? To you, because you're going to be the hero. I said, so here's this gula for all the Rashi Yeshiva to have money and not to have to roam the world collecting. Make sure that every one of your students feels that you accept him for who he is, not for who you decided you want him to be. Suddenly that message of love is spread all over the place. And who doesn't want to be part of a successful place? Who doesn't want to contribute to something that's saving child after child? I have so many great stories tonight, but I'm out of time, my friends. So whoever wants to leave, you're more than welcome. I'm going to continue a little bit because I got some good stuff that I can't hold back. But seriously, I don't get insulted. Baruch Hashem. It's all, everybody can fly out. In order to love somebody else, one of the contingencies is to be humble, humility. We began talking about Cham Ben Zion Shaul. I want to tell you a little story of humility of Cham Ben Zion Shaul. Cham Ben Zion Shaul knew Kol HaTorah Kula as if it was in front of him at any given second. There was nothing he didn't know by heart, instantly, simultaneously. There's no way to describe it. It's a different world. A man of that caliber, you would think, had a few drivers. Some gabayim. Takes 6 months to get into him. Got to pay money. You know the way you went to talk to Cham Ben Zion? You either waited by Porat Yosef and he met you in the hallway and he just spoke to you. Or you knocked on the door of his house and he answered the door himself most of the time and took you in and served you some food on top of it. And if he heard that you came looking for him and you weren't around, then there's a good chance the next day if he saw you in shul or in the yeshiva, he came over to you and said, sorry that I didn't see you yesterday. What do you need? How can I help you? And this is the man that knows Kol HaTorah Kula. It's a living, walking Sefer Torah. And he was asked so many times, it's a zaken ve'eno lefi chvodo. It's not for your respect. And this was his answer. He said it's for the kvodo of kvodo malei olam, for HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself. To be involved in each and every detail of the world every single day. You can't bend your finger down here. Only if from Shamayim first they said that it's going to work. That is Mishum Kvodo of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But it's not Mishum Kvodi to come to you to see what you need. It's not my honor to come to you. It's HaKadosh Baruch Hu's respect to go into the dumps of the dumps where his kids are doing things that are spitting in his face to help them out over there. Imo Anochi B'tzara. Hashem's with every person in time of need, and there's no greater person in time of need than someone who's depressed or on drugs or on different situations or was abused in his life or God forbid all these other tragic things. There's no greater tzara than that. So it's for Hashem's kavod to go to each and every one of these places. But it's not for my kavod to talk to somebody who I don't like the way he's dressed. What? Isn't that totally whacked? Off? Crazy? I don't invite guests to my house that don't fit this and this standard. Why not? Because my kids. That's a catch-22. If your kids are raised in a warm, loving home, that the values of Torah were given over with warmth and love, I don't care who you bring to your house. Not only won't it be a problem, it'll give them big chizuk. Because they see that we have to help other Jews. You'll teach them to be a mensch. And if your kids weren't raised in a warm, loving house, then maybe a nest will happen. That could be. But without a nest, they're anyway going to be goyim and mechalei Shabbat. So at least do a mitzvah on the way, do some achnasat orchim. So that whole case of this one is not for me, that one is this one takes too much time, the other one takes too much attention. We have an excuse for every guest. Everyone. This one overstays their boundaries. This one I don't feel comfortable with. What happens if Hashem doesn't feel comfortable with you one day? Not going to be a good thing, huh? God says, feel comfortable with every Jew, and I'll always feel comfortable with you. Accept every Jew no matter what he does, I'll accept you no matter what you do. אהיה אשר אהיה, במידה שאתה מודד עמי, אני מודד עמך. The way you behave towards my kids, Hashem says, I behave towards you. Ve'item li am segula, we're a nation that loves segulot. We have a segula for everything. I spoke to somebody today who's married to a non-Jew, who asked me for a segula for something. I said, I have a great segula for you. Get married to a Jew instead. Segula. Sometimes you hear a guy on Shabbat, he's on his iPad, because he has to find Perek Shirah, because he wants to read it 40 days, he doesn't want to miss on Shabbat, then he doesn't have a book. So he's on his iPad. That's how confused we are. Mechalel Shabbat, comes to a rabbi, take out my Ayin Hara. Take out your Chilul Shabbat, then there won't be Ayin Hara. We got all the values confused. That's the Bilbul of the Dora Acharon. Rav Nachman talks about it a lot. It's called the Bilbul of the Nitzatzot Lifnei Biat HaMashiach, because Baruch Hu sticks a certain confusion in the world. The greatest confusion of all is accepting another. Every year on Tisha B'Av, I say this story. This year I'm saying it early because I plan that this year Tisha B'Av is going to be a big party in the Beit Mikdash. Now, I don't want to lose the story, so I'm going to say it now. I don't know if you're aware, but this week on Tuesday, Mashiach came. You're not aware of it? Oh, so let me tell you what happened. He showed up, and he walked into a Sephardic synagogue, and he was dressed like a Hasidic Jew. He had long peot and tzitzit hanging on top of his shirt, and a long jacket, and a big shtreimel on his head, and he said in Yiddish, Ich bin Mashiach. And they told him, nah, Mashiach can't be Ashkenaz, that's not true. And then he said, you know what? Maybe that's right. Could be I missed the memo. He left, drove to Queens, went to some place on Queens Boulevard, bought one of those robes, whatever they're called, I don't know how to pronounce it, and one of those frisbee hats, and the woven ones, you know what I'm talking about. They're pretty cool, actually. And he put it on, and he said he's going to go somewhere else. And he walked into some nice, beautiful Ashkenaz shul. And he said, Mashiach, I came. I don't know how you say that in Russian, sorry. But I said, no, Mashiach can't be a Bukhari in that. Not going to happen. So he said, okay, I'll try something else. Maybe a short jacket and a colorful shirt, maybe that'll work. Went into some black hat yeshiva. I said, no, Mashiach without a hat? Can't be, you're not the one. And like this, he went from shul to shul, changing outfit to outfit, and nobody wanted him. He went back to God and he said, they don't want me, so why should I do anything for them? And he stayed upstairs. You know how Tisha B'Av is going to be a Yom Tov? What happens if Mashiach is exactly the community member that you don't like? If that doesn't exist, that you don't like somebody, then he can come. If there's somebody that you don't like, Mashiach is whoever you don't like. If there's somebody that you don't feel comfortable with, Mashiach doesn't feel comfortable with you. Yeshiva shel mala or yeshiva shel mata, the beginning of Kol Nidrei. Rabotai, we're already more than halfway through Chodesh Tammuz. Man tshuva mimashmesh uba. It's almost Rosh Hashanah. It's almost Rosh Hashanah. Anu matirim lihitpalel et avayanim. What's our kameya on Yom Kippur that our prayers should be accepted? That we tell Hashem, what's an avariyan in Hebrew? A criminal. That even criminals we love. That even the Jews that did the worst things in the world, we love. Because a Jew can always do tshuva. There's never a second that a Jew is lost. Even on his deathbed, he's already 1 foot up, 1 foot down, tshuva. Yesh koneh olamo b'sha'acha. So there's never a reason, justification, excuse, or anything else not to respect, love, admire, and adore every Jew. Now listen to an amazing story. There is a gentleman in Israel who, I'm assuming that maybe a lot of you, especially the Hebrew-speaking ones amongst you, heard his name before. Honestly, until this week, I haven't heard his name. I wish I would have, because he has great material. I already listened to 3 of his speeches online that I found. His name is, and I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly, please correct me if not, Rav Chaim Ziyad, I think, or Zayad, something like that. Random, I was looking for Rav Meir Schwartz, it's a speaker I like listening to in Hebrew a lot. I was looking for one of his speeches on YouTube, and this came up instead as a recommended. And I said, if it came up, let's try, I don't know. And the title of the speech was Hartza'ah Merageshet or something like that, or whatever. It was a good branding. They did a good job. They got me to listen to it. I heard it. I got hooked on this guy. I already listened to 3 of his speeches. He has phenomenal stories. Honestly, the first story I heard of his was too good to be true in my world. So I verified it. And it was exactly the way he said it with zero exaggeration. And that's why I continue listening to him, because he got a lot of credibility in my world at that point. This is an amazing thing. We might say to ourselves, I want to love every Jew, but it's so hard. And some Jews don't exactly make it easy to love them. And that's putting it mildly. How am I going to succeed to overcome such a hurdle that's so hard? How am I going to do it? And the answer is, Abali Ta'il Misayimoto. If you really mean something, if you really want something genuinely, Hashem will do it for you. Let me show you how this works. One day we're sitting in his house learning, like he always did. And it was about 10 p.m. And he was in the middle of a sugya, and he had a question that he didn't know the answer for. But he had in his memory, the years before, in a sefer called Ma'agalei Chen, he saw an answer to this question. And he goes through his library looking, Ahavat had, I don't know exactly how many Sfarim, but over 30,000 Sfarim. And he goes through his library looking for the sefer, and then he remembered, I don't have this sefer, because this sefer is not in print. I heard that recently it's been put back into print, but it wasn't in print. And now he needs the sefer. So he asks his son, Rabbi Moshe, he says, maybe you could arrange the sefer Ma'agalei Chen. He makes a few phone calls and he finds out that in the regular libraries of the yeshivot, they don't have it. It's a rare sefer. So where is it? At the entrance to Jerusalem on the right side is a beautiful building. It's called Mossad Harav Kook. Mossad Harav Kook has a library inside. It's open a couple of days a week. That has a lot of rare Sfarim. And if you want to borrow a rare sefer, you could do it over there. But it's not so simple. You got to come when they're open. You got to leave a check, a deposit, a guarantee of a lot of money, because they want to make sure they get it back. These are rare Sfarim. And you have to leave your ID and sign on the whole thing that you're responsible. And then it's 10 p.m. and it's a night, Thursday night. They're not open again until Monday. And Ahavat hears this from his son, Rav Moshe, that there's no way to get the sefer. And his natural response is he bursts out into bitter tears. He says, how am I going to get through the weekend? I need the Ma'agalei Chen. He says, Rabbi Moshe, do something. Find something. He says, what's there to find? The place is locked. We have no access. I don't know who the guys are. I don't know anything. Can't. Ahavat goes back to his learning. A few minutes later, there's banging on the door. Chovak HaChamlan, 45, Ahavati's house, banging on the door. Rabbi Moshe goes to the door, opens it up. And lo and behold, there are 4 police officers with a warrant. They came to investigate Rav Ovadia Yosef. Only in the Israeli government can such arrogance come. And a judge signed on the bottom of this stupid piece of paper. What are they investigating him about? That he was involved as a chief rabbi of Israel in some complicated divorce case. He was posek the halacha in favor of the wife, that she was right in the situation. And the husband committed suicide. And the husband's family is blaming him for not reporting to the authorities that this guy is suicidal, as if he knew. Right? If he would have known, he would have davened for him, he wouldn't be. So they got a judge at 10 p.m. with a warrant to investigate him in his house on this thing. They need to take a witness, a testimony. They're asking Ahavat questions, and he's answering them. The Rashba says this, the Rosh says that. He doesn't even hear what's going on. He's not interested. And these 4 officers, detectives, whatever they are getting angry. I'm going to give you one of them's names. One of the 4 guys that was there, today he's very famous. He's on TV a lot because he's the head of the security of the entire old city of Jerusalem. If you go to the Kotel, this guy is involved with you being able to get there and back safely. His name is Yehuda ben Chamo. Very, very special person. Yehuda ben Chamo was one of the 4 people who were sent to his house. After 10 minutes of the back and forth, and they see their Ahavati's heads in a different world, they realize what they want from this man. They filled out whatever they filled out on the paperwork, and they said they'll give it back to the judge. He has nothing to do with it. Have a good day. Case closed. They left. They walked down the steps. Yehuda ben Chama, who comes from a traditional family, turns to the other three guys and he says, listen, we messed up so badly. So I said, what do you mean? He said, I don't know what we were thinking when we came here. This is the Gdol Hador, the greatest Torah giant in the world. We came with a warrant to embarrass him, to investigate him on such stupidity. We didn't have the brains to tell the judge, what is this? And what if he's makpid? What if he's upset at us? God forbid what's going to happen to us. The greatest rabbi in Israel, we need this trouble now in our life? No way in the world! We got to go ask him for forgiveness. A Jew is a Jew, they all had hearts. And they said, you know what, maybe he's right. And even if you don't believe so much. You know, there's a very famous story that a king once called in a Jewish guy that he wanted to set up in order to kill him. And he said, I heard you know a lot. He says, yeah, I'm pretty smart. So I'm going to ask you a question. If you get it right, you live. If you don't, you die. And he said, okay, ask. Well, what's he supposed to tell him? Don't ask. King does whatever he wants. He said, tell me when I'm going to die. This is what the king tells him. That's a catch-22, right? If he says this second and he doesn't die, so he kills him. He was wrong. And if he says some other time, it's not provable. So also he doesn't know what he's talking about. So he can also kill him. Well, he has the perfect setup to kill him one way or the other. And the Jewish guy looks back at the king and he tells him, King, Your Honor, forgive me for saying this, but I'm going to tell you exactly when you're going to die. The same second that I am. The guards thought that was extremely arrogant. They went to kill him. And the king says, don't do it! And I said, why not? They said, what if 1 in a trillion chance he's right? I don't want to take that risk. These are the 3 officers over there. Look at Yudah and tell him, Yudah ben Chama, and tell him, what if a 1 in a million chance you're right? And Ravad is upset, and his kpeidah could actually cause harm to us. We don't need this now. And they go back up the steps, and they knock on the door, and they're let in again. And at that point, the family wasn't interested anymore. They're like, well, you have another warrant? They said, no, we want to ask forgiveness to the rabbi. We realize what we did is wrong. The son thought it's pretty appropriate that that's what should happen. So he let them in. They went into Ahavat and they said, Mechila, it's not us. We just work for the government. The judge said we had to do what we had to do. But please, Rabbi, say out of your mouth that you forgive us and you're not makpid. And suddenly Ahavat picks up his head and looks at them. And he tells them, Ani ma'od makpid. I'm very upset. Now they're panicking, they're shaking. This is exactly the death sentence they were scared of. Rabbi, understand, it's not us, it's the judge, it's this, it's that. Lo ma'nyen oti. Not interested. So this Yudah ben Chama said he has to work this out. He can't leave without working it out. He says, Rabbi, is there anything I can do that'll make you happy, that'll correct this, that'll fix this for me, so you won't be makpid? He said, yeah, I need a sefer called Ma'agalei Chen. If you bring it to me, I'm not makpid. He says, I don't know what Sfarim are. He says, so then I'm makpid. Yudah ben Chama walks out, goes into the living room, calls Rav Moshe Yosef over, and he says, what is this book? Where do you get it from? I'll go buy it right now. What's the story? He says, no, you can't buy it. It's in the library of Mossad Harav Kook that's closed till Monday at 9 in the morning. He said, who owns Mossad Harav Kook? He said, we don't know. If we would know, we would have done it for the rabbi already. We don't have the ins and outs over there. He said, okay, we're going to do a little search in the car. And 4 police officers, detectives, instead of interrogating the chief rabbi of Israel, are busy looking for who's in charge of the library of Mossad Harav Kook. And they find the name and the number of a guy who lives in Telstone. He's alive until this very day, by the way. And Yehuda looks at his 3 friends and he says, Kolam Choniot to Telstone. Telstone's 25 minutes outside of Jerusalem. All the cop cars to Telstone. By then it's already 10:30 at night. This guy is in bed very comfortably, going to sleep before Friday morning, gets up early. Before Shabbat, he has to prepare, and is banging on his door. His wife answers the door. Eshet Chayil, she's making chalot, echot Shabbat, and she sees 4 cops. 4 cops by a door is never a good sign. She says, what's going on? We need your husband. My husband? What do you want from my husband? He's sleeping. We need him right now. He tells them in Hebrew, Lama. Why? So they answer her back. I'm going to say in Hebrew and translate because it just goes better in Hebrew. Hamatzav shelo gvar maspik mesubach. His situation's already complicated enough. Don't complicate it more. Guy gets out of bed, gets dressed, comes to the door. Yes, officers. He's a clean citizen. In the car. He said, why? He said, 4 officers, detectives, with cars, with guns, at 10:30 at night, you don't want to argue with. In the car. Where are we going to? We're going to Mossad Arav Kook. Why? We have to search your library. So what do you think's in my library? Drugs? They said, no, we're looking for Ma'agalechin. He's like, 10:30 at night, Ma'agalechin, guns, police cars. Ma'agalechin, otherwise you're in trouble. And this guy goes with them and unlocks the door. Only in Israel you could do things like this. And opens imagine you went to an NYPD officer and try to get him to get you a book, right? I don't know what it'll get you. You might get yourself something. And he gets them the sefer. When he gets them the sefer, they take the sefer, they tell the guy, you're free to go. What free to go? I gotta get back home. Take a cab, do whatever you want. Boom, they're on their way back to Hanuf. Rehov HaKablan, 11:15, 11:30 at night, knocking. Rabbi was always up, learning. Rabbi, Tfaddal, Ma'agalechin, you got it. And this is the way Yehuda describes the story. Rabbi stands up from the table. He holds the sefer, he kisses it, and he starts dancing. And then he tells them, you saved me. He says, of course I'm not makpid on you. And he starts blessing them. He said blessings like that in his entire life he didn't get. Later on he said there were many times in his service that he was shot at and other crazy stories, and in insane miraculous ways each and every time he was saved. And he attributes it all to the blessings he got from Rabbi Yaakov that night. Now listen to the cute ending of the story. The following week on Tuesday, in the afternoon, Rabbi Yaakov was in the middle of learning and he needed some sort of sefer. And he called Moshe and he told him, I need the sefer, can you arrange it for me? And Moshe said, yeah, but it's going to take a little while because we have to get it from somewhere or whatever. And the place that he knew to get it from was Bnei Brak. It's going to take an hour to get there, an hour to get back. So I said, what's the problem? Bring the officers, tell them to do it quicker. Like the whole story never happened. The only thing that happened. That's what Tzon Yereyav Yaseh. If you really want something, if you're willing to shed a tear at night over Ma'agalechin, because Baruch Hu tells you, I'm going to get you a Ma'agalechin. We'll get a judge to sign a warrant to bring in 4 officers to go to Telstone, to bring a guy to open a library, to get a sefer, to bring it back to your house. And non-religious guys, just out of a superstition, because that's what you really want. I have so much more to say, but I'm done with a blessing. I don't know if we want to love every Jew. I wish we did, but honestly, I don't believe it. Because we're so quick to talk bad about people. We're so quick to knock entire communities, to make jokes about people, to freely speak about anything and everything. So I don't think we got to the point that we want to love every Jew. So my prayer and blessing to Hashem tonight is that maybe we'll bring Mashiach closer by at least wanting to one day want to love every Jew. Ruchim to you, Hashem.